He thought she was just another face in the courtroom. He slapped her, publicly, without shame. What he didn't know? She was the judge. And in the next 4 minutes, everything he believed about power started to fall apart. This isn't just a courtroom drama. It's a battle for justice, truth, and legacy. When silence is no longer safe, one woman stands up and the whole system shakes. This is the story of Judge Eleanor Rowe. It was supposed to be just another Monday. The courthouse in Savannah, Georgia, buzzed with the usual rhythm: clicking heels, murmured legal briefs, and the echo of gavel strikes behind closed doors. The morning sun sliced through the tall glass panels, throwing sharp beams across the marble floor like warning signs no one noticed. Officer Darren Klein noticed one thing: time. He was already late. "Let's get this over with," he grumbled, storming into courtroom 3B like he owned it. He didn't. Behind him, Officer Rick Daly followed with a smirk and a large paper cup of burnt coffee. Both men wore their uniforms like armor, creased, spotless, and decorated with just enough commendations to disguise the rot underneath. A black teenage boy, no older than 16, sat at the defendant's table. His name was Malik Green. The way he shrunk behind his public defender made him look younger than he was. He'd been arrested the night before for criminal mischief, a charge Officer Klein slapped on him for allegedly spray painting a mural wall downtown. There had been no mural, no spray paint found on Malik, but there had been a hoodie, black skin, and a late hour. Klein leaned against the prosecution table, his arms folded, surveying the near-empty room like a king awaiting court. "Let's move this along," he barked toward the clerk. "I've got better things to do." A woman entered through the side door. No robe, no nameplate, just quiet grace. Mid-60s. Coffee-brown skin, silver hair pulled tight into a chignon. She carried a file under one arm and the weight of something heavier: experience. "Excuse me," she said, walking past Klein toward the bench. Klein didn't recognize her. That was his first mistake. "You here for the defense or something?" he called after her, half laughing. "You look a little lost." She said nothing. He didn't like that. The clerk's eyes widened. A warning. But Klein had never paid attention to warnings. "Hey," he snapped, marching over. "I'm talking to you, lady." Then it happened. A sound like a gunshot, only sharper. The open-handed slap cracked across her cheek, turning her head slightly to the side. The room stopped breathing. Papers froze mid-shuffle. A journalist's coffee cup tipped over, unnoticed. Even Daly, usually the backup chorus to Klein's missteps, looked stunned. The woman didn't flinch. She turned slowly, like the earth itself was pivoting on its axis. And then she spoke. "Officer," she said, calm as still water. "Is this how you greet officers of the court?" Klein blinked, confused. What?" She stepped toward the raised bench, then up the stairs. No one moved. "Who the hell are you?" he spat. She sat. "I am Judge Eleanor Rowe," she said, her voice slicing the room in half. "And you just laid hands on a sitting judge in open court, without cause." Klein paled. Daly took a step back. Whispers erupted like brushfire. "Did he just? Oh my God, he hit her. She's the judge?" Clerk Lindsay Ferris clutched the desk as if anchoring herself to reality. "She wasn't in her robe," she whispered, "not as a defense, just in shock." But Eleanor Rowe didn't need a robe to hold power. Her eyes bore into Klein like they had witnessed 1,000 injustices and had just been given permission to respond. "Is that your defense?" she asked. "That I wasn't dressed properly enough for you to recognize my authority? Or was it that I didn't look like what you expect a judge to look like?" Klein stammered, then puffed up. "You came at me. I thought you were interfering with." "No," she said flatly. "You didn't think, you assumed, and now you've assaulted a judge with multiple witnesses under active courtroom surveillance." The courtroom cameras blinked in quiet confirmation. And just like that, a routine arraignment became the spark to a fire Savannah had no idea was about to consume it. By 11 a.m., a single slap had turned into a media wildfire. News vans parked outside the courthouse. Reporters scrambled to verify the whispers leaking through courtroom doors. Cell phone footage, blurry but unmistakable, had already made its way to Twitter. The caption was blunt: "White cop slaps black woman, she's the judge." Whole courtroom freezes. Inside her chambers, Judge Eleanor Rowe sat motionless, one hand cradling a glass of water, the other resting near her cheek, where Klein's slap had bloomed a faint pink line. "Security footage is confirmed," said Deputy Court Administrator Mason Bell, eyes wide behind his glasses. "2 angles. Full audio. Time-stamped. It's already been flagged by 3 news outlets and 2 civil rights orgs. Let them have it," Eleanor said quietly. Bell blinked. "You want them to?" "I want them to see what justice looks like," she replied. At that moment, her longtime bailiff, Denise Harrell, stepped in holding a thin manila folder. Her face was tight. "We pulled Officer Darren Klein's file," Denise said. "You need to see this." Eleanor opened it. The first page alone said more than enough. 17 citizen complaints in the last 9 years. 5 excessive force allegations. 2 pending internal reviews. 0 disciplinary actions. "He's protected," Denise said. "We've seen this before." Eleanor nodded slowly. "What about Officer Daly? Less aggressive on paper, but he's been Klein's partner for nearly a decade, follows his lead, signs off on his reports, corroborates everything. Every complaint Klein gets, Daly signs off against." "And the prosecutors?" Eleanor asked. "Who's been letting these cases slide?" Denise hesitated. "Most of Klein's cases go through ADA Marcus Weller." Eleanor's eyes narrowed. Weller? She remembered Weller from her early days on the bench, ambitious, oily, and always just one handshake away from higher office. He had a talent for reducing charges when cops got too aggressive. Claimed it was to preserve the department's reputation. "Get me everything on Weller's case history with Klein," she said. "I want a list. Closed cases, settlements, complaints dismissed without action, all of it." Denise nodded. "You planning something?" "I'm not planning," Eleanor said. "I'm preparing." Because Eleanor Rowe had spent 35 years inside this system. First, as a defense attorney fighting for black youth railroaded by the courts, then as a prosecutor trying to clean house from within, and now as the first black female chief judge in Savannah's Superior Court. She knew exactly how deep the rot could go. She just didn't know how many of the termites still wore robes. Across town, in the sterile confines of the district attorney's office, Marcus Weller had just slammed the door to his office shut. "She wants case files?" he barked at his assistant. "She doesn't get to call an investigation without running it through the proper channels." "But, sir," the assistant said nervously, "she's the chief judge." "I don't care if she's the Queen of Georgia," Weller spat. "We're not letting this circus undermine public confidence. Get me a press statement, something about procedural error and maintaining courtroom integrity. Spin this, now." He knew what was coming. That slap had opened a door they'd spent years bolting shut. And Judge Rowe? She had just stepped through it. Back in her chambers, Eleanor's office phone rang. "Judge Rowe," she answered. "Eleanor," came the voice of Police Chief Daniel Madsen. Calm, friendly, threatening. "We need to talk," he said. "You're escalating something that doesn't need escalation." "You mean public accountability?" she replied. "Or are we still pretending this was just a misunderstanding? You're stepping into a hornet's nest. Then maybe it's time someone shook the hive." There was silence. Then, "Don't make this political." "I'm not," Eleanor said. "I'm making it personal." When she hung up, she turned to Denise. "Get a message to Internal Affairs," she said, "in the Attorney General's office. I want a formal inquiry into the Savannah PD." Denise raised a brow. "You're serious?" "Deadly." Because now it wasn't just about a slap. It was about a system that assumed a woman like her didn't belong until she reminded them she wasn't going anywhere. The first threat came at 2:13 a.m. Judge Eleanor Rowe was reviewing Klein's incident file for the fourth time when her phone buzzed with a new text from an unknown number. "Nice house, shame if something happened to it." She stared at it for a moment. No photo, no sender, just those 7 words pulsing like venom on the screen. She took a breath. Not fear, focus. Eleanor had lived through bomb threats in the 90s, through courtrooms filled with sneering attorneys who called her sweetheart or ma'am with just enough sarcasm to sting. She had learned that power doesn't shout, power stands still when the ground shakes. She placed her phone face down, stood, and walked to her bedroom window. Down the hill past her front lawn, a black SUV was parked half in shadow. Its engine was off, but it hadn't moved in 2 hours. Behind her, a soft knock. "Mom?" Her daughter, Talia, peeked in. 28, lawyer in training, sharp as broken glass and twice as dangerous when cornered. Eleanor turned. "You're still awake?" Talia walked in holding her own phone. "I just got this." She held it up, a different message. "Your mother's making enemies? You sure she's worth it?" Talia's jaw was clenched. "This is intimidation." Eleanor nodded. "And confirmation." "Of what?" "That we're hitting the right nerves." The next morning, Chief Madsen called again. This time, he wasn't friendly. "You're going to get someone hurt," he growled. "You mean me?" He didn't answer. At noon, a smear article dropped online. Judge Rowe accused of bias in 2003 ruling. The piece cited an anonymous source, a former court official, who claimed Eleanor had once shown favoritism toward a black defendant. No records, no evidence. Just enough to stoke outrage. By nightfall, a photo of Eleanor from her college years surfaced at a protest, fist raised, eyes fierce. The caption, "Activist judge or legal radical?" The spin was on. The machine was moving. By Wednesday, her office had received 4 voicemails from blocked numbers. One referenced her grandson by name and school. Another whispered, "Resign or regret it." She met with U.S. Marshals that afternoon. "You believe these threats are credible?" Agent Rivera asked, notebook open. "I believe they're real," Eleanor replied, "and escalating. We'll increase protection on your family and your residents?" Rivera said, "But we need to know. How far are you planning to take this?" Eleanor locked eyes with him. "All the way. I'm not just looking at Klein anymore. I want the names, the deals, the paper trails. I want sunlight on everything." That night, her daughter and grandson were moved to a safe location. Talia protested, but Eleanor insisted. "They're cowards," she told her. "They won't come at me directly, but they'll try to bleed me through you. I won't let them." She returned to the bench the next morning without her robe. Instead, she wore a dark blazer, crisp slacks, and a steel expression. The courthouse was tense. Officers avoided eye contact. Clerks whispered when she passed. Protesters had gathered outside the entrance, some for her, some against. The temperature in Savannah felt 10 degrees hotter with the pressure. And still, she climbed the stairs to courtroom 3B. Inside, she faced the press. "I am formally recusing myself from Officer Klein's arraignment," she announced. "Not because I am compromised, but because I refuse to allow this case to be quietly buried in procedural mud." Whispers stirred. Cameras clicked. "I am also requesting a special review of all cases involving Officer Klein and ADA Marcus Weller. I am filing that request directly with the Department of Justice." A few gasps, some cheers. One man at the back shouted, "You're making it political." Eleanor turned to face him. "No, I'm making it public." Later that evening, she received a package. No return address, no label. Inside, a photograph of her grandson, taken 2 days earlier, walking home from school. On the back, in block letters, "Stay in your lane." She didn't cry, she didn't panic. She called the U.S. Marshals. Then she picked up the phone again. "Get me the DOJ, we're going nuclear." By Friday morning, the Savannah courthouse didn't feel like a courthouse. It felt like a fault line. U.S. Marshals patrolled every entrance. Reporters were stationed in the lobby, some even camping overnight. Rumors of resignations, subpoenas, and late-night shredding sessions buzzed through the marble hallways like flies in a burning house. Judge Eleanor Rowe sat at the head of a long, polished conference table in her private chambers. Beside her, Agent Rivera, ADA oversight official Lucille Denton, and her longtime bailiff, Denise Harrell. Across from her, a thick stack of documents freshly unsealed. Over 50 past cases involving Officer Klein are now under independent review, Denton said, flipping through the folder. 12 show signs of prosecutorial misconduct. Eleanor leaned forward. Meaning? Evidence withheld, witnesses intimidated, at least 3 confessions possibly coerced. And Marcus Weller? We found his signature on dismissal memos tied to at least 6 of those cases. One of them was for a 17-year-old boy hospitalized after a rough arrest. No body cam footage ever submitted. That footage was never missing, Rivera added grimly. It was redirected, stored on a private cloud run by a security firm under contract with the mayor's office. Eleanor's jaw tightened. Let me guess, that contract was approved by the city council. Rivera slid a document across the table. Unanimously. The motion was introduced by Councilman Edwin Darby, who, according to our audit, also accepted campaign donations from the police union's legal support fund. And that's not all, Denton added. Weller was at a fundraiser 2 weeks before that vote. So was Darby, so was Klein. Eleanor sat back. It was bigger than a slap, bigger than one officer's aggression or one prosecutor's complacency. It was a machine, carefully greased with silence, intimidation, and plausible deniability. And now it was unraveling. By Monday, the dominoes started to fall. Assistant District Attorney Marcus Weller resigned. His office released a statement citing health and personal reasons, but internally he was cooperating with federal investigators in exchange for a lighter sentence. Councilman Darby went silent. His staff refused all media contact. Within a week, his re-election campaign website vanished. 2 precinct captains quietly retired. And then came the big one. Judge Harrison Avery, a longtime Superior Court judge and one of Eleanor's earliest mentors, was suspended pending a judicial ethics investigation. Eleanor stared at the official report in disbelief. Avery had dismissed 2 excessive force cases involving Klein over the last 5 years. He'd ruled against motions to unseal police body cam footage and had sealed juvenile testimonies that contradicted official narratives. He's the one who swore me in, Eleanor said, her voice distant. I know, Denise replied softly. That night, her office received an anonymous voicemail. You think you're cleaning house, but you're burning it down. She didn't flinch. She recorded it, sent it to the marshals, and went back to work. The next morning, she stood before the press again, not in robe, not on the bench, but in front of the courthouse steps, black blazer buttoned tight against the morning wind. This city has protected a system of unchecked power for too long, she said. This is not about one officer. It's about a network that confuses loyalty with justice and silence with order. Reporters leaned in, cameras zoomed. I have submitted a list of names. Officers, attorneys, and public officials to federal investigators. I am not reading them aloud here because I believe in due process, something many of them denied to others. One reporter shouted, "Are you afraid?" Eleanor didn't pause. I am awake. There's a difference. Back inside, she found Agent Rivera waiting with another folder. Internal Affairs just cracked a cold case, he said. Remember the journalist who died 3 years ago? Julia Spence? Eleanor nodded. Car crash, ruled an overdose. Turns out she'd filed a Freedom of Information request about Officer Klein 2 weeks before she died. We traced her death back to someone who altered her toxicology report from inside the medical examiner's office. Eleanor's mouth went dry. Do we know who? Rivera gave a slow nod. We're closing in, but Judge, this isn't just corruption, it's conspiracy. Eleanor exhaled. Not in fear, in certainty. Good, she said, then it's finally time to try the system, not just the man. 3 weeks later, the federal courthouse in downtown Savannah was filled beyond capacity. TV trucks lined the street. Protesters held handmade signs, "Justice for all" or "Justice for none." Rowe showed us the way. No more silence. Judge Eleanor Rowe didn't stand behind the bench that morning. She sat in the front row of the gallery, not robed, not presiding, just present. A witness to the moment the system finally turned the mirror on itself. Officer Darren Klein stood trial for 5 felony charges: assault on a federal judge, obstruction of justice, witness intimidation, perjury, conspiracy to suppress evidence. But Klein wasn't the only name on the docket. In closed proceedings, ADA Marcus Weller had pleaded guilty to misconduct and agreed to testify. 2 officers turned state's evidence. The city councilman who signed the police cloud storage contract was under grand jury review. Judge Avery had gone quiet, his office lights off, his bench empty. The ripple had become a wave. The prosecutor stepped forward. The state calls Judge Eleanor Rowe to the stand. The room held its breath. Eleanor rose. She walked to the witness box with the calm of a woman who had already endured fire and learned to walk through it unburned. She took her oath, sat, and looked directly at the jury. "Judge Rowe," the prosecutor began, "what happened on the morning of April 17th? "I was struck in the face," Eleanor said, her voice clear and low, "by a man who didn't know who I was because he assumed who I wasn't." "What did that moment mean to you?" Eleanor paused. "It meant the system I dedicated my life to no longer recognized people like me as part of it. Not unless we wore robes, spoke softly, and never pushed too hard. It meant that law and respect and truth had become negotiable, reserved only for those who looked the part." She glanced at Klein. He didn't meet her eyes. "But it also meant something else," she continued. "It meant silence was no longer protection, that if I didn't stand up, others would stay down." Klein's attorney, a young, overmatched man, approached with forced confidence. "Judge Rowe, would you say you became emotionally involved in this investigation?" "I became ethically obligated," she replied. "Do you admit you may have brought personal bias into this?" "I brought facts," she said. "Bias implies I distorted the truth. I didn't. I exposed it." There was no comeback. 2 days later, the verdict came, guilty on all counts. Sentencing would follow. But the verdict had already reshaped the city. A statewide task force was launched to review officer complaints. Over 100 cases linked to Klein and Weller were reopened. Civil rights groups filed motions to vacate wrongful convictions, and the Savannah Police Department was placed under federal oversight. Still, for Eleanor Rowe, the moment of reckoning wasn't the gavel drop. It came on a rainy Tuesday, back in the same courthouse where it had all begun. Denise knocked once. "They're ready for you." Eleanor entered the Judicial Review Board hearing in a tailored black suit, no robe, no pomp, just her. "Ready." "I am submitting my resignation," she said to the board. Gasps, murmurs, flashbulbs. "I believe in the law. I believe in its power to protect, to punish, and to heal. But I also believe institutions must be rebuilt by new hands. I lit a fire. It is not for me to stand in its glow." One board member stood. "Judge Rowe, you've inspired a movement. You could stay and lead this." "I already have," she said. "Change doesn't need a monument. It needs momentum." And then she left. 2 months later, in a quiet suburb just outside Savannah, she sat on the porch of her daughter's home. Her grandson, Jameer, pedaled into the driveway, backpack bouncing. He dropped his bike and ran up the steps. "Auntie Elle?" Eleanor caught him in a hug. "I saw you on the news," he whispered into her shoulder. "You made them listen." She pulled back and looked him in the eyes. "I made them look," she said softly. "Listening, that's still up to them." That evening, the city buzzed with headlines and hearings. But here on that quiet porch, the air was still, peaceful. Because justice isn't just about law. It's about what we leave behind and who we leave it for. And in that moment, as dusk fell and wind stirred the trees, Eleanor Rowe smiled, not in triumph, in peace. What is lesson of this story? 1. Power unchecked becomes dangerous. Whether in uniforms or offices, when accountability disappears, injustice thrives. 2. Silence protects systems, not people. Real change begins when someone chooses to speak out, even when it costs them everything. 3. Justice isn't about revenge, it's about responsibility. Judge Rowe didn't seek to punish a man, she sought to rebuild a system that failed everyone. 4. Courage can start with one person. Your voice, your stand, your refusal to be silent might be the spark that lights someone else's fire. 5. We all have a role. Whether you're a student, parent, leader, or neighbor, standing up for what's right starts exactly where you are. What do you think about this story? Let's comment below to discuss. And don't forget to subscribe our channel to listen to more interesting stories.